I'm a singer.
I am not.
You can feel it. My husband, my executive producer, is dancing.
Oh, nice.
We're watching the video. I don't want to get in trouble by. I'll get in trouble by YouTube. Right. Hello, hello, hello.
Good
Listen,
morning.
did you watch the Super Bowl?
Mhm.
Did you see Bad Bunny?
So good. So good. So much fun. Like,
It was
we've
so
forgotten how to have fun, I think, is what, like, the bad reactions to that tells me, like, we don't know how to have fun anymore.
you know,
It was such a celebration. And
it was a celebration.
I don't speak Spanish, even though it's, you know, a very spoken language in our country, but I felt like I didn't need to know what the lyrics
You
were.
don't need to know. This is the thing, like the thing that was so telling to me was thinking about we just want the most qualified. Okay, so you have the number one downloaded artist in the world. Yeah, but can he speak English? He could.
Yeah.
Can't you speak Spanish? I've been listening to we used to live in South Florida, so
Okay.
I've been listening to reggaeton and music that I don't know the language for a really long time. And hopefully,
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't like, there are times when I'm like, I don't know what I just said, but it sounded naughty, felt naughty.
Well, this may be a bit of a discursus, but I have opinions about the fact that don't we don't actively include multiple languages as a requirement in our
Right.
school systems. Like you may have, oh, you have to take a semester of, but I believe we're missing out. Not just in terms of like cultural understanding, but actual brain development. People that speak multiple languages think differently.
That's right.
And what a shame that we don't all get that.
I think even the song that I just played is a good example of like, and this is the thing that was taught to me was, oh, it doesn't really translate. It doesn't really there's no word for that in English.
Mhm.
And not being able to communicate, right,
Yeah.
effectively, even being a native fluent English speaker, there are no words for that. I remember watching, because I watch the Hallmark Channel, as our millions of fans know. I watched the Hallmark Channel, and there was this movie, and she was like, "Oh, this whatever she was eating is so good. I love it." And the lady just started laughing, and she was like, "What's so funny?" She was like, "You Americans, you love your dog, you love your purse, you love your car, you
Yeah.
love the spaghetti." And she was like, "No, there's different words for love, and one is for your
No.
children, and one is for this." And so
Yeah.
the kind of love that you
Mhm.
have, but also, oh, you wanted somebody who looked like you that made you feel comfortable.
Well, that's obviously thinking about inclusion this morning while I'm getting ready, since that's what we're talking about. And it occurred to me, and this is one of those, well, yeah, Kate, that's so obvious. Good for you for finally having words for it. That inclusion isn't about what's comfortable for me, right? Like, it's helping you feel like you belong on your terms. Now, you have to maintain boundaries and all the things, right? And you don't have to be a total chameleon to do that. But it's not about, I feel like you're included.
Well, to our producer, he would feel more comfortable if I told people who Kate was. Inclusion. Yes. Kate, everyone. John is on a plane somewhere. I've stopped asking. And we have Kate Johnson, host of the Well Led podcast, joining us. Would you give everybody a little intro to
Yeah,
you
I'd be happy to. Kate
so
Johnson,
you can be included?
whatever. We're talking. That's all I need, actually. I'm an introvert. I don't need to talk about me, just talk about the ideas. But yeah, I'm in Dayton, Ohio. I own a consultancy called 123 Limited. I specialize in talent and succession planning, but also helping individual leaders be effective. The goal is to be effective in your leadership. You start with yourself, and then you can start thinking about leading other people. And all of that happens, in theory, within an organizational ecosystem that's supporting people and making plans for them.
I was looking at you on LinkedIn and I was like, are people still doing that? I mean, there are so many where it feels like there's just like rock, paper, scissors in leadership,
Mhm.
you
That's
know?
exactly right. Like there's a dearth of preparation. I think it's a big contributor to a lot of the workplace problems that we're seeing, if not the contributor. The fact that we are not preparing people for leadership, that people who may be good at doing their job but have no interest in learning how to lead are put into leadership roles, and then they're not given the right tools. I spent probably a good 10-15 years being the person responsible for facilitating the talent mapping process for a large organization.
Mm,
About 13,000 employees and probably 250 tops executive leaders in that organization. And it was so fascinating, the attitudes and behaviors surrounding the process. If I kind of like put on my anthropology hat and think about what I observed, what it tells you about humans, for starters, but also the modern workforce. And it's, I am convinced it was not unique to that company. I think, in the research that I do and talking with other people, it's just kind of standard that we want good plans, we want successful succession, but people aren't willing to like make the investment in
yeah.
people and time and all the things. My dream, like my little, in my heart of hearts, goal, the mark I want to leave is giving people different ways to think about how we do succession planning. I think it's time to totally drop the 9 box.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is so outdated and has never really served
No.
anyone other than people already in positions of authority. Um, and I actually, this is maybe totally going off piece, but I have been doing a lot of contemplation around the way beehives function and what that can teach us about growth and development.
Say more.
Oh, I'm one. Bees are just amazing, right? They're so industrious. They're so purpose made. Um, they are such a silent part of like our food system, and just the fact that we live, it's in part because bees are out there doing this work, and they give us honey and they give us beeswax, um, which used to be called light because it could be made for candles. This is like medieval times.
But still,
And yeah, so just they're fascinating just to observe and to look at what they contribute in the world. But then when you start really studying how the hive functions and what's going on in there, it really is a model for how we can be running leadership development or just development as a whole. One of the things that I found recently is a note. So the average, I'm talking honeybees here, but the average honeybee lives about 40 days. Right? And that's from egg to death. When they're in development, so they're in the cell, the nursery cell, They're fed by other bees, um, all the things, right? The cell is open, but when it's time for them to go through that larval stage and become a bee, they cap the cell so that they have this transformation in private, if you will. But again, 40 days, the time that's spent in that cap cell is typically a week. So if you think about a lifespan that's 40 days, a full week devoted to that growth and development, that transformation that happens, that's a significant investment,
Right.
right? And it's not a rushed process, it's not begrudged, it is essential to the life and health of the colony that that next generation has the time to grow. And then once they hatch from the cell, there is this beautifully logical progression of the role they play. And this is the worker bee, the females, right? Which is a whole other conversation we could
Right.
have.
Right.
Yeah, but they, if I remember the sequence correctly, and I apologize to anyone who knows better than I if I have this wrong, but they start basically like cleaning up, and then they have roles that they play in the nursery. So they become the sisters who are caring for the next generation. Then they start moving to other roles with more um, kind of like structural responsibility, if you will, like guarding the entrance to the hive. Then they begin going out and foraging close to the hive. And eventually they graduate to being essentially field workers, where they're out collecting pollen and other food sources at a farther distance. So, you can see that there's do what's close to you, where you started. That's where you're going to start your work. Then we're going to start giving you more responsibility, and eventually you're going to be able to perform independently. If we think about worker growth and development along those same lines, you are preparing people to lead from every position,
I
whether they take a
never
formal
thought
role
about
or they stay in place. I worked for a little over 20 years in acute care health settings, hospitals, physician offices, both you know primary care and specialty. So that's a lot of my mental models are associated with how healthcare functions, how hospitals work. And nursing has this wonderful concept of the bedside leader, um, that they ingrain for their people in that profession, that you are a leader in your care of the patient. And it makes it very easy then to think about how leadership extends from the bedside, the point of the work, the core work, all the way up into the boardroom and the C suite. And I think if we can kind of combine, braid together the worker bee model and, the way queens are developed, that is a deliberate process where they are fed special food in order to be ready to serve as a queen.
I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love what Jeremy just put. This is what we do when AI arrives. Just gather food and go home.
I know,
I
right?
mean, maybe
Yeah.
maybe a little more than that.
Maybe, but I'm okay with that too. I mean,
I'm
when the robot overlords arrive, I'm here to
I
serve.
think that it's so crazy because, like, when I go look at, I only watch the ones when the bees actually, where they show the queen and then they put them in and then all the bees just follow.
Mhm,
Um, but it also talks about how strong and able that leader is. That's
mhm,
the part that I think is always amazing in putting that, like looking at it. But also, it's so complex where you don't think it is. It's something
mhm.
like that. Like they know what's going on. But I
Yeah.
mean, now I start thinking about, do we, you know, I think it's being intentional. I mean, when I was used to be a recruiter, I used to say, when people would say, I'm looking for another job, first I would say, have you talked to your boss? Like, what's going on? And then I
Right.
would say, do you want to lead people or do you want more money? Because so many times they would just want more money. It's like, well, then ask for more money.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know if I deserve whatever. It's like, no, like they don't want you to leave. If they have more money, they give it. If they don't, they'll tell you. Um, you would hope. But like you have to be, that's why it's like, is there succession planning? And again, even looking at like the rules and what you put forth of what skills, you have to be more than good at your job. I mean, I think some of the challenges like you were talking about is just not giving feedback
Oh my gosh.
at all.
Yeah, I'm currently collaborating with a woman who's out in the Bay Area, who's another people like we are. Um, Kim Rohrer, it's her name. She owns a company called Patchwork Portfolio and does a lot of cultural communication work. But we're co-writing the ultimate guide to feedback that doesn't suck. So I have opinions, lots of
Right.
opinions about feedback. That, for one thing, we overcomplicate it, which is human nature. Um, but our fear of giving feedback, the amygdala response that happens on both sides of the equation, has made it so much more difficult than it has to be.
Well,
When go
what do
ahead,
you think
sorry.
the biggest thing, no, like what do you think the biggest challenge is, like on what people
So I do.
actually, well, let me back up.
Okay.
First of all, when we're talking succession planning, like we're there's some assumptions that we have to make there,
Mhm.
right? Like that you like your job, that you getting the tools that you need, that we're meeting your base, like at the very minimum, your basic health, you're
Mhm.
getting the right health care, you have the
Yeah.
right benefits, that we see you as a whole person.
Yeah. Well, Jackie, you're assuming that the conversation around succession planning starts focused on the individuals
Oh,
in that
well,
model.
that maybe because yeah,
Right?
sorry, I serve
No.
in a people function, not a business function. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the problems. And this is something I've been thinking about personally because I'm kind of restructuring how I do my business because of this tension that exists. I experience personally, and I've observed it too, of how do you balance a person's need with a company's need, right? Like, if I want the business to be successful, even if it's just I want it to succeed so I can get my paycheck, even if I don't like deeply connect with the mission or purpose, that's fine. But that's one of the reasons to want the company to succeed. So you can't put your needs first. And yet,
What?
and yet,
Well, we
you
are
have to
gonna
care
be
for yourself.
in trouble. Like,
Yeah.
well, I try to explain that to in the majority with my girlfriends, the conversations about work, I have to stay quiet because
Mhm.
I'm like, like, oh, like I don't like my boss and they don't look, it's like, grow up. Welcome to the real world. Like HR, they told me not to speak to HR because all they care about is the company. It's like, no, they care
Mhm.
about like, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the 1,300 people, like
Right,
13,000, 250,000 people that depend on us to pay their
right.
bills, later go into taxes, which later goes into roads. And so, love
Yeah,
you, but also need to make sure that we all don't lose credibility, money, in
mhm,
the company,
right.
because how many times, like, I don't know, I'm dating myself, but you go back to like the WorldComs and
Mhm,
the Enrons when it was like, no, if you get this wrong, like you lose credibility for everyone. Their stock is
right.
nothing. The 401k plan is dead. They never get rehired,
Yeah,
all because you didn't get off for that holiday and now you're mad because you couldn't go to your junior, prom pictures for your kid. Like,
yeah,
it's not that we don't care, it's that we
yeah.
and going and where it broke was, in my humble opinion, is when we started trying to be a family instead of trying to be a
Oh,
business.
sweet mercy. Jackie, where have you been all my life?
Oh,
Because
right here.
yeah, you are not a family. I have a family, right?
That's right.
Yes, you need close relationships. You spend more time at work than you typically do with your family. So relationships should develop. They should be healthy with boundaries, all the things. But if that's filling in for family for you, go fix some stuff.
Yeah.
Which is, I
Yeah.
can say, it's a privilege to be able to say, "Oh, I have a family. I have a loving family, healthy relationships there." That's a privilege. And you're not going to get that sort of care at work.
Right.
And if you're looking for that, you are only ever going to be frustrated.
Well, you should talk to your therapist. I mean, there's something
Yeah.
else going on,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I
And it's,
think,
again, there's research that shows, I mean, the whole Gallup, do you have a best friend at work? You having friendships at work matters. You mentioned before, like, is the base stuff taken care of? Belonging is part of our need, and friendships are an indicator of belonging. So, of course, we want people to be in an environment where they can have those bonds, but that can't supersede what's happening in the business. And the business can't supersede the needs that the people have. Like there has to be this balance. You mentioned earlier talking about how your Hallmark channel, oh, Americans are so funny, you only have one word for love. That is, again, you're speaking my language when you talk about that, because I think that leadership at its best is actually a love story. Not obviously not romantic, but not even platonic. It's, I want the best for you.
right.
And I think love is the fulcrum that balances what the company needs and what people need. And if we can infuse leadership with more of the mindsets and behaviors that demonstrate love for myself, for my people, for the work that we do, a lot of the other stuff just falls away, right?
Right.
The, hey, I know my boss cares for me, if that's a word you're more comfortable with. My boss loves me. So the fact that they denied me Thursday off isn't because they're out to get me. It's because this is what's best for the work that we're doing. And because I get that love and care from my leader, there's trust, there's respect, all the things that fall. But if you feel like it's an us against them, one, that's not love. And two, you're always going to be in opposition with each other. And when we're in opposition, we want to protect ourselves.
Right. I
So we
mean,
get defensive and argumentative and all the things.
I what is interesting is I'm thinking back. I've only had one person. I never managed huge teams, but I've only
Mhm.
had one person ever quit before.
Okay.
And they felt like, so they felt bad, and it was like, no, like it's a. I've had lots of people promoted internally. Like I loved watching that and helping them do that. Um, but always encourage people, like, this is where we're going to go, this is what we need to do as an organization. And that's why I also think it's so important that, please, leaders, regardless of what you're leading, when you get your monthly, quarterly, whatever business plan, when you're looking at the numbers, please teach your employees what they mean. You can teach them how to go off into the world and
Hmm.
be great leaders, because you pivot based on the numbers when we have sometimes shared trauma and sometimes shared goals and values. But it makes everything else easier
Hmm.
when you are working from, this is the numbers. Let's talk about our part. What can we do to affect this number?
Hmm.
For talent acquisition, it was always hire faster, make sure we understand the gaps,
Yep.
talk to more people on the team so we know the persona of who we're going to hire, even though we're not in a direct selling role, we can hire the best people that we can
Hmm.
find.
Exactly.
And so when you come from that place, it makes your job so much easier. I mean, one of the things that I like to do, and just from the nature of your work, I feel like you probably have an opinion about this too, is building systems that
Mhm.
help drive success regardless of the role and person involved. Like
Mhm.
they're like, this is the system, this is the program, these are the steps in order to get, like, this is the recipe. And
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry if everybody who from Robert Half just cringed because we used to say, did you follow the recipe? That Robert Half follow the recipe.
There's a
But
reason that recipes work, though.
yeah, it was a recipe, delicious. But it really went into how I even talk about things now. I remember early in my career, I would be like, Dad, my boss is so stupid. I would be like, he's wrong. He's wrong. And my dad said, the best way to show your boss he's wrong, it's like, what? And he was like, do it exactly the way your boss told you to do.
Mhm.
And then write him a list at the end and say, these are the steps that I think we could have taken on this process. Don't just tell him he's stupid. Tell
No.
him, having a meeting at 5 a.m. that's required is stupid, or having this. And what was funny, it was like the next 6 months, and I was like, oh, he's really not stupid. Like,
Yeah. Oh, he actually does know what needs to
yeah,
be
he
done.
knew what he was doing, and we just had a difference of opinion. That
Yeah.
doesn't always mean
Right?
stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so
I'm very fortunate in the bosses I had when I first entered the workforce. I started in retail management. I worked at a Barnes and Noble right out of undergrad.
I still love Barnes and Nobles, by the way.
I I have like bookseller habits I can't break, so I'm not comfortable in bookstores because I want to straighten.
I was about
And
to say, you
then
go in and you're like, hmm.
I know I need to like re-alphabetize. I still have dreams about working at the bookstore, and that's
Oh,
been uh oh gosh, 24 years since I left that setting. Um yeah,
Jamie
yeah.
said that to me in the cereal
I
aisle. Our Jamie said,
understand.
it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, oh gosh. For a long time, I could remember, like, my employee code, the code to get into receiving. I had a dream recently where I couldn't remember the code to get back into, receiving, and I was like, "Oh, I finally reached this place where I've forgotten. Okay, good. What's gonna happen next in this dream?" But, at any rate, the gentleman that I worked for in the first time I was a leader, he had been a grocery store manager. So a bookstore was like nothing for him, right? It's not the same volume, it's not the same chaos. And if we would be running low on a title that was really popular, he'd be like, "Ah, it's not milk at Christmas. It's not like we ran out of milk at Christmas." And that perspective has served me so well. Going from retail into healthcare, it's like, all right, there's stuff that is milk at Christmas in healthcare, right? Like, there
Yeah.
are things that are life or death. That's what you get worked up about. This other stuff, and most of HR and learning and development, you don't have learning and development emergencies, right? You
I
have,
used to say, we're working with people. We're not working with kidneys.
yeah,
You say this is not, but in healthcare it
exactly.
could be.
Yeah. So, but Bob saying it's not milk at Christmas that's one of the things I go back to. But having a leader that sets that tone of, we're going to worry about the important stuff. The other stuff, it's fine. He also, I don't, I like to think that he was being intentional in pointing this out to me, that it was a bit of a mentoring moment. It may have just been I was the person standing there, but we had an assistant store manager. So it was manager and then two assistants. One of our assistants was a workaholic. She she would have been there all day every day because that's where she filled her bucket. In fact, sometimes I think she probably locked the doors at the end of the night and kept doing work.
Had an extra bucket.
Yeah, but she was rushing around the store, very
Mm.
busy, very busy. And Bob and I were standing there. He'd been doing his walking, management of by walking around, and she rushed past us. And he said, you've got 8 hours to get your work done. Kind of have to wonder what's going on if you're still here.
Mm.
It's like, oh, if I can't do it in 8 hours, that's a me problem, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Right.
that's one of the things where I always get worked up about that, where I am all for teamwork. However, by working more than 8 hours and not going to my boss or leadership or talking about what's going on, they don't know that I'm not getting what I'm
Yeah.
needing. So that all the numbers are wrong. Headcount is wrong. The tools we need to get the
Mhm.
job is wrong. And that's when you have like Bob leaves and nobody knows how to run the fax machine because Bob was the one who did it. And no one knows how to work the copy machine because Bob did it. But I
Mhm.
do want to go back because I love what James asked. It said, how important is it for leadership to have a collaborative mindset versus a matter of fact, follow the recipe mindset? Is a balance needed? I
It
mean,
You need both, right? Like some things are going to be, we can co-create this. We can take our time and work it out together. And some things are going to be, this is the way we need to do it. Highly regulated fields, you need to follow the recipe,
yeah,
right? Think about, so high reliability is one of the concepts that we talk about in healthcare, and it's where you have high risk and significant resources are at stake, whether that's life, property, what have you. Airlines are known for it. Healthcare is known for needing high reliability. The nuclear industry as well, that you have to have procedures and checklists for those things that need it. So you identify what is it that has to be done a certain way, either because we're regulated, because of safety, the actual reasons. Then you can start saying, where can we start loosening up from that? But just because you're in an area where we really need to follow the recipe, it doesn't mean everything is like that. And you've got to be able to make that distinguishment between, or distinguishment. I'm just making
I
words
liked
up
it.
on
I was with
Thursday.
it. I liked it.
Yeah, you've got to be able to distinguish between must do's and where freedom lives. In fact, I think this is one of the reasons that so much change fails, is because we don't get clear about that for people.
Right.
Um, but you have to be able to tell people, here's where you have freedom and here's where you have responsibility.
Ooh, yep. I mean, I was helping someone uh, who was interviewing for a job, and they have inside the job description was one paragraph, and it said, "Do it the ABC company way." We do things the ABC company way. And so, what I advised when they went to the interview, I was like, make sure that when you answer the questions, you say you align everything with the ABC way.
Mhm.
I guarantee people are not going in and saying, they're going in and saying what they would change, how they would innovate, what they would do,
Yep.
and they're not looking for that person. They're not going to get the job. The person who gets the job that said, I'm going to continue doing what you did here, and I see this going here went well because of this, and I went over the ABC way and I align. Like that's what they're looking for. And I
Mhm.
think it really depends on the organization because I also believe that true leadership, we don't hand out all of the things. It's like you're handing out various parts. They all have to work together. And that
Mhm.
slight creativity or collaborative, like it's like showing up to a costume party and you're not in a costume, or vice versa.
Mm.
Showing up to a regular party and you show up in a costume, like you ruin the whole theme. I
Yeah.
We were at a white party and like the way, but somebody went in black, and I was like, wait, usually, I
Yeah.
mean. in a lot of these white parties, the host will come in red or pink or like, wants to stand out, but it's like that's on purpose. And so if you do that, you take away,
Mm-hmm.
just follow the rules and
Yeah.
then make suggestions, talk about
Yeah.
it, and you will find out how important it is because some places are just not that.
No. Well, you're talking about culture,
Right,
really, because one of the ways we talk about organizational culture is, well, this is the way we do things here,
right,
and that's everyone's contribution at the end of the day.
right.
You're also leading toward Jamie's question helps talk about this, and you talked about making space for creativity. There's opportunities for leaders to do recognition of great performance through job crafting.
Mhm.
Hey, you're really good at this stuff. You've been doing a fabulous job with this sort of project. Do we want to make that part of your work going forward? What could that look like? Or you've expressed an interest in such and such. And again, you're a great performer, you get results, you meet all expectations. What could it look like to craft this job? Something, if I may toot my own horn here, something I am really proud of in my career is that for the last 15 years, with when I was in-house, I wrote my own job descriptions. I had the opportunity to say, this is the work that I get to do. And that is a big engager and a huge retention piece because I wrote the job description. I'm here for this.
Right.
And being able to do that with your people where it's allowable because it doesn't require the recipe. It just, one, that's inclusion. It's saying, here are your strengths. We celebrate them, we acknowledge them, we talk about the value you bring. But it's also this method to do co-creation with individuals, and you're just going to get better performance.
I think that's what it is. Like, I get so angry when people like have weaponized the phrase DEI and they don't understand it. Like collaboration is just another word that could have been used where it's like, okay, our internal culture is that you present, like the leaders present all of the plans and then we see how it affects the other plans, and sometimes you have to work with these people, but it's taking all the strengths to build a solid foundation. And also, one of the things that, I mean, it's also Black History Month, so I hope everybody
Mm,
goes and looks at W.E.B. Du Bois, and it's
yeah.
something that he talks about a long time ago, was that because of injustices like during slavery and Black people, namely, he talked a lot about what was going on to Black people specifically, and he was saying that it's necessary for Black children and families, they have to view themselves, but they also have to view themselves as others see them, not in a do I look pretty, am I attractive kind of way, but for actual safety. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I walk in here, what could happen to me, and how do I need to present myself in a way that's going to keep me safe and get me what I need. I think I've told a story a lot of times. So when I live in Texas, and my husband and I were at a like street fair, and I had to go to the bathroom, and someone said, "Hey, you can just go over there." And in the front there was like a rebel flag. And so at that moment I had to determine, like I had to go and be like, what is, what's the cost? I went over to like a donut shop that was locked and I banged on the door and I was like, I have to go to the bathroom and I'm too afraid to go over there. And they were like, oh yeah, don't go over there. Like they opened and locked the door and allowed me to come in and use the restroom. They had to assess the risk as well. I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
let this person come into our donut shop that I don't know, who's banging on our door. Like, these are things that people don't think about. And so like, if I don't feel safe, I'm wasting a lot of energy
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out not just the work, but also how you're going to perceive the work and how it's going to affect me in my career. That's every single decision if I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And so that's why it is building in systems. And so it doesn't matter if you take the letters off of a title, you either have embedded this type of culture into the organization or you haven't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm reminded the weaponizing of DEI is, it's a chilling way to talk about it, but it is right. It gets bandied around either as a way to dismiss things that need addressed, like, oh, well, that's just woke nonsense. No, it's not. We can see that, one, generational trauma is a real thing. Um, talking about having to constantly pay attention, not to just what's my experience, but how am I presenting? Because if people feel threatened by me just because of how I was born, something I had no control over, that level of like attention and being on wears on people. And the stress associated with that is going to inhibit other functioning. So we have to change it so that underrepresented people are safe and that they feel like you are seen for who you are. Because yes, I see color, but I don't make assumptions on it, right?
I always say when people say I don't see color, I'm like, I'm black, by the way. Like
Yeah,
I should, they're like, I needed to tell you. Oh, you saw that. Oh, okay. I
yeah,
didn't know if you saw that. Oh,
yeah. Of course you are. Like, and it's not who you are. It's
right.
one of the aspects of who you are.
Yeah.
Um. Anyway, we could probably have
That's
a
a
whole
different,
other
that's a different,
conversation
but that
about
was
that.
like the whole part. Like, what was even going back to the very beginning of what we talked about, the job that I do, especially consultatively, is to go into organizations and build systems, like I said, that are going to help their hiring to
Mhm.
find the right people and be more efficient. And so many people hire, you can tell the company culture, um usually meeting with everybody, and I always say, this is what it says on your website, this is what it says in the culture. And so I want everybody to, close your eyes if you feel comfortable, but but I want you to think about everybody who works at the organization. And now don't tell anybody or write it down. I want to think about the people that you hate at the organization. Let's think about the people that you don't like at the organization.
Yeah.
And could you fire them? If you stood up and said their name right now, would you, who in this room would jump on you for saying their name? And who also would you think the CEO would put as employee of the month? And who would you put as the employee of the month? And then I'm like, okay, now you understand your company's culture. Like,
Yeah.
in case you, so now we can start talking about go moving forward into the systems that we're building it for that system. And people were like, and I always say in those rooms, the head of sales is always an asshole, by the way. We're not going to fix that. That's like a whole different game. He's always an asshole. She's
Yes.
always an asshole. That's every company, and we need them, right? They're
Yes.
also very brave. They're willing to take one for the
Mhm.
team every single day. So we let them be the asshole. And so we have to be able to take care of them at all costs.
Yeah.
Just understand. So, um, because I don't think we allow people to be their true selves and understand how they interconnect. And as a result, we're putting on masks. And that's another reason why it is important to at least have a recipe, because you'll get confused as to what's
Mhm.
expected and what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I
Exactly.
I do bake, and I make bagels, and I've been working on it very diligently for a
Yeah.
very long time. And I've studied bagels and I've researched bagels. Like I'm a freak about it.
Uh-huh.
And I showed somebody all the pictures of all my failed bagels. Maybe I'll write an article about it. Because
That
I
could
was
be
like,
a fun little coffee table book.
oh,
Bad bagel.
it is. They're so bad. And I said I want to have a bar that's called like Booze and Bagels, and everything is just on a bagel. Um, but bourbon and bagels. Um, but what was so interesting in studying and learning about these bagels is that you get to a point where you take a bite and you're like, not enough salt, and you take another one and you're like, that's too much water, and you take another one, you're like, that one has diastatic malt and this one has like malt syrup. And then
Yeah.
the impact in America, what they call them is some people eat lenders bagels, and we call those like a roll with a hole. Like it's not made
Okay.
in the traditional sense of what a bagel is supposed to taste like, but
Yeah.
that's what people think bagels are. Anyway, all of that to say, um, you you want internally to make sure that you set those standards and the recipe across so that we have the same element. How many times have you said, this is what the company culture is? Oh, well, let me tell you about the culture in IT.
Mm-hmm.
We don't follow any of those,
Yeah.
values, or our mission is something different,
Yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
said, JB said, a roll with a hole. I'm dying over here. That's my new favorite. You're not a bagel. You're just a roll with a hole.
Roll with a hole. Yeah, that's one of those I feel like it's enough of a tongue twister I would get in trouble.
Maybe.
I you're I don't bake much because I don't like the precision that's required. I prefer to cook because you can make it up as you go, right? It's cooking is an art, baking is a science. That's how we
Yes.
talk about it in my home. And I'm very precise in general, but not in the kitchen. And part of inclusion is knowing your own strengths and weaknesses. I think
Yeah.
you've got to be able to say, you've got to be humble about not just what you're good at, but what you're not good at too. Like humility isn't just downplaying things, it's also
Right.
knowing, like, I'm a good cook. I'm not a good baker.
Right.
You don't want me singing in public. You
I
know,
do. I actually do.
mm, we would take that back. Uh, not entirely tone deaf, but definitely in the neighborhood. So, yeah, I one of the things I think leadership needs, and I am very heavily focused on leadership, and I know sometimes that can be sort of at the cost of what is it employees need. It's why I wanted to get out of human resources. I
Mm,
recognized that, oh wait, I constantly side with leadership in this. Like that's the perspective I'm taking when it needs to be balanced. Uh, that's not good for an HR person. Go find something else
or
to do, Kate. And it's, oh, I can go do stuff with leaders if I go into organizational development. But so I think a lot about what leadership looks like, well led. It's my obsession. And I think really great leadership, human leadership, starts with vulnerability.
mm,
And when leaders hire people that look like they do, and not just physically, it's not just, oh, I only hire people that are as pale as I am. It's also like, oh, we've had the same kind of background, the same schooling, the same work experience. When that's what you see happening, that's a sign of a leader that hasn't really examined who they are and how they are in the world, because they're assuming their way is the right way. So, one of the things, let me bring this back into the concept of inclusion. I think inclusive leaders are vulnerable because they've done the work to
mhm.
say, here's where I have weaknesses. This is my soft spot. This is where I can be wounded. And if we're going to have a team that functions at its best, I have to account for what I'm not great at.
Oof. That is, I mean, I fully agree with you, and that's the people that you should hire, should be able,
Mhm.
like, uh one of the things for me, especially having ADHD, like, it was really important for me to record all meetings and make sure
Mm.
that it would go through, and I would send emails. I can't tell you how many times that people were offended that I would send an email giving a recap of the meeting. And I was like, you're so vain. You thought this song was about you. Like, I just wrote it down. I thought I would share. Like, it had nothing to do with you. Like, P.S. I'm keeping the notes, even if I don't email you.
Yes.
Um, and, and didn't, you know, didn't want to pay attention to what else could be going on in the room. Like, I wanted to make sure I wrote it down. I wanted to hold myself accountable. I wanted to put those things out there. Leadership is a skill. It's not something that you earn.
Yeah.
And there are people um, that are really great leaders that actually don't do the work. I think one of the things that's really annoying from a hiring a TA perspective, especially in technology, is when you're looking for a CTO that codes. And most CTOs are like, I haven't coded in
Right?
a million years. Like, I don't need to know how to code in order to lead the team
Mm-mm.
able. Like, there's other things, like leadership is a skill. And I think we can see the epidemic of poor leadership in that so many organizations now are talking about performance management, how to give a review, how to give a one-on-one, how to give specific feedback. If you are afraid to give feedback, my friend, you are not a leader, period.
Mm-mm.
Because that's like the first thing that you have to do, if
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah. When I was meeting with William to join the Work Defined network, we got to talking about this whole idea of people are natural born leaders. I think that is nonsense.
Yeah,
Leadership is not an innate trait that people come into the world with. Leadership is learned, earned as well, to your point. Um, I have a soapbox that I will now drag out about the great man theory. This idea that occasionally, into the world is born a great man who will lead like no other. No, absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And frankly, it's intended to position people in power to keep them in power. Great
yeah,
man tells you, oh, old white man,
right,
not a great woman,
right,
not a great, Puerto Rican.
right,
No, it's saying only men who look like I do can be leaders, and we have a birthright. Whereas, no, you have to work to lead.
well, you know what's
And
funny? Go ahead, sorry.
oh, well, I for a while I was the HR person for a lot of corporate services in this company, and like I had finance, and for a while I had this. I was never going to get support for it, but I had this theory that we could trial having like a people leader and a functional supervisor,
Mhm,
that you didn't need to necessarily be an accountant to manage accountants.
right,
The people side of it could just be handled by somebody who knew how to manage folks.
right.
And then you would have an expert in the field who would kind of check the work. And it's the CTO who codes. You don't have to code to be a chief tech officer.
No.
Why? Like that's not what the work is.
I feel like my oldest started working at a very fancy steakhouse in Grand Central Station, and listening to them, how a restaurant works. All of us have gone out to eat, but there's a reason why there's a hostess or a host up front
Mhm.
dealing with the things that are happening and going on. They set the pulse for the full evening on where people sit, on
Yeah.
what time that they get sat, all of these things. And they're so undervalued. But it takes true leadership, especially when you have to look somebody straight in the face and say, "We've canceled your reservation," or "It's going to be 2 hours before you get sad," or "We're closed for a personal party. Sorry that you're here with your whole family, and I know it's like your daughter's graduation, but no." Like
Yeah.
all of these things, like I feel like they're so brave. But then we also see the reason that it's important to have strong leaders is evidenced right now just from like the Epstein files. And when you're looking at how many non-leaders and how many followers
Mm-hmm.
that fell into that, right? Like you see how many people have lied and didn't have integrity that you trusted to lead like millions, if not billions of dollars. And again, a fiduciary responsibility. You see where their loyalty is and what's truly important to them. And they weren't vetted for their like leadership
Yeah.
skills. They were vetted for, for um, being a bro.
Bro
That's what they're saying. I don't know
connections.
any oligarchs. I know broligarchs. And I was like, in America, we have broligarchs. And
I'm
we
gonna have nightmares about that now.
ah, broligarch. I can feel it. Red pills. They're all fully red pills. I was gonna say earlier too. I do think like a lot of at least Black women that I know, while leadership isn't something you're born into, I do think that you are passed down this generational trauma that isn't give you the skills for leadership, but helps you identify bad leaders and gives you a different way of moving for your own safety.
Hmm.
I just remember like going way back when I was a kid, and then we'll get to what James is saying. Um, when we moved to Texas from New York when I was 9 years old, and uh, somebody like a little kid called me the N word. I had never heard of it. I'd never heard it before. Um, it wasn't like my parents sat me down and said, "Okay, so let me tell you what people are going to call you in the fourth grade." Like I never heard the word. I didn't know what it meant. I knew it hurt my feelings, and somebody was making fun of me. And so my mom like took me aside and gave me a hug, and then like started history from like I lost my like wounded at wounded knee, like all the way back, like historic, like went back, like
Yeah.
to like the very beginning of time. It was like hours and hours and hours, and she felt so sad and such hurt. And then my dad pulled me aside and was like, "Don't ever let anyone call you that ever again." And I was like shy. I was a kid from New York. My full name was Jacqueline, and people thought I was a boy because I had a Q in my name because we were in fourth grade.
Yes.
And so, and I had really short hair. I was the only Black kid in all the grades from kindergarten all the way up. And I was like, really, really still shy. I am closet introvert and so sad. But the next day, when somebody said that, like I knew I had to act in a different way. Like I was like, I ended up like yelling at the kid, turning them in, having a big thing. Like, but I would have never done that. But I understood what the assignment was and carried it through where I knew that people were not going to like me because of some of those things. And so I knew I had to hold myself. I had to do things scared.
Hmm.
Not everybody is told they have to do things scared. That being said, like I'm looking at what James said about, looking at receiving cold outreach related to HR or leadership solutions. It says even when the topics are highly relevant, it seems like many leaders are pretty closed off to do initial conversations. And he said that's a personal one for me. I think my joke is always that I don't think people get into HR because they like people. Um, and so I think that uh, people, I think when you get cold outreach, like you don't even know what I'm dealing with right now. Like, so I think it's when you have a blanketed approach about,
Yeah.
I love it on LinkedIn when people are like, I'm sure you're going through. I'm always like, you don't know me. You have
Mhm.
no idea who I am. I think I'm going to start responding to all those, going, oh yeah, yeah, right, same. You're so smart. And let's just see what the next thing is, and then I'll just post them here on a weekly basis because I get about 200 a week of
Yeah.
people saying, "Hi, Jackye. I'm sure things are so hard right now because it's February and February's hard." And I'm like, "Oh yeah,
February is so hard.
so hard."
You
What do
know,
you think
it always
about? What is your perspective on cold receiving outreach or HR leadership solutions?
you know, as a small business owner, as a self-employed consultant,
Yeah,
I've had to rethink how I feel about that as
yeah,
opposed to when I was in-house getting those calls. Um, I they're not the way, right? This is not the way because really doing the work with an organization, doing the work that's going to positively impact how people lead, the experience employees have at work, it has to be in relationship. And cold outreach is like being hit on at the bar.
mm,
Like, I didn't ask for
right.
this. Yeah. Yeah. And when my husband and I were first dating, we were long distance. He hadn't moved back to Ohio yet. And I called him one day after I took myself out to dinner at a local brew pub. And this guy had come up to me and tried to kiss me. Yeah.
What?
I know. It was horrible. Um, he wasn't even good looking, right? Like, what an insult. So, but I was telling my husband about this, my then boyfriend about this. He's like, well, you should have yelled at him. I was like, that's not how I felt in the moment. You needed to call attention to what was going on. It's like, no, I don't know that that's the right response for me. And I think that's how I feel about cold calls. It's like you're coming up into a bar and trying to kiss me, and I don't know how to
Right,
respond to
right.
it because I don't know who you are. Maybe you are the person I want to kiss, but this isn't how we're gonna start this interaction, dude. This could get me going down a whole different path about how sales and marketing um, are way too male because I think women are we need a different way to go about sales because it just feels too much like we're trying to conquer and win, and
Yeah.
that's not how I don't want to be too generalizing, but I feel like that's not how most women are wired to go into that space.
Well, I think you should be able. Well, we'll have to have that when you come back because apparently John goes lots of places without me, and it is the fastest hour in
Yeah,
Hollywood. That's what we like to call it. I can't believe it's already 10:04.
I know. We need to be timely and
Jamie and we have to say to Jamie, our producer, the next time Kate's on, we're going to talk about women in sales
mm,
from a Jackye and Kate perspective. So
yeah.
I'm so happy that you were here. Thanks for filling in last minute. I really appreciate it. Thank you, James and Jeremy. We usually only like people with J names, but Kate, we make exceptions for Kate's and Kate
Last name is Johnson,
Johnson, so it still counts. It still.
right?
I appreciate you so much. It was really enlightening. I enjoyed our
Yeah.
conversation.
This is such a treat. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. And everybody, make sure that you scan so we can get all of the information, all the times that we're going to be there. And we appreciate you so much. So here's cheers to you. And we'll see you next week. Clink, clink. Bye.